It was just past 2 a.m. when John Carter stepped outside the roadside diner, hoping the cool night air would quiet his restless mind. He lit a cigarette, even though he hadn't smoked in 3 years. Old habits didn't die easy, especially not for a man like John, ex-soldier, combat veteran, and a man carrying more memories than he cared to count. That night, he wasn't looking for trouble. He wasn't looking for anyone, but trouble had a strange way of finding him, especially when it wore heels and cried in the dark. She was sitting on the ground behind the diner, barefoot, holding her shoes in one hand and covering her face with the other. Her long dark hair fell across her shoulders like a curtain hiding something broken beneath. John watched her for a moment, unsure if he should speak. Then she looked up, and their eyes met. That single look hit harder than anything he'd ever faced overseas. Her eyes were filled with pain, but not the loud, dramatic kind. This was a quiet, deep hurt, the kind that had been carried for far too long. "Need help?" John asked, keeping his voice calm and soft. She didn't flinch or cry harder. She just looked at him, really looked, like she was trying to read his soul. "No," she said. "I've been helped before. Didn't end well." Then she got up, slipped on her heels like she hadn't been crying at all, and walked off into the shadows without another word. John stood there a while, smoke curling in the cold air, wondering who she was and what she'd been running from. Something about her didn't feel random. It felt like a beginning, though he didn't know of what. He finished his cigarette and went home, but sleep didn't come easy. 2 days later, she walked right past his booth at the diner like nothing had happened. Wearing the same black boots, now clean, and a fresh waitress uniform with a fake smile that didn't reach her eyes. She placed a coffee cup in front of him and said, "Refill?" John blinked. "You're working here now?" "Seems that way," she answered. "I remember you," he said, leaning back. "Behind the diner, that night." She paused just slightly. "Do you?" "Yeah. You said help didn't end well." She gave a tiny smile that disappeared just as fast. "Well, maybe I was wrong. Her name was Rachel. Or at least that's what she told him. It could have been real or fake. John didn't know. And at first, he didn't care. They started talking during her shifts. At first, it was small stuff. Coffee preferences, the weather, diner regulars. But soon the walls came down piece by piece. He learned she had no family nearby. No real friends. She lived in a rundown motel out of town, paid in cash, didn't own a car, and always sat with her back against the wall. She knew how to read a room the second she walked in and kept a knife in her boot. Just in case. John didn't ask too many questions. He didn't have to. He'd seen that kind of fear before. Deep, trained, lived in. Not the kind you learn from a bad breakup or a rough childhood. This was professional, silent, heavy. But she never acted weak. In fact, she was tough in all the ways people don't notice unless they've lived through hell. John started dropping by the diner more often. He told himself it was for the food. The truth was, he just wanted to see her. Being around Rachel didn't make his demons disappear, but they got quieter. She listened when he talked about his army days. The friends he'd lost, the parts of himself that never came back. She never interrupted, just nodded and looked at him with those deep eyes, as if she understood every word. One night after her shift, they sat outside on a bench near the back exit. It was cold, but neither of them moved. "You ever feel like you came home from a war just to fight a different one?" he asked. Rachel looked at the ground, then back at him. Every single day. They didn't kiss. They didn't even hold hands. But something passed between them that night, silent and strong, a kind of unspoken promise. Two broken people seeing something familiar in each other. Still, Rachel never told him where she came from, or what had made her run. And John never asked. He knew better. Sometimes the past was a closed door you didn't knock on, unless you were ready for the answer. But that didn't stop him from wanting to know more. About her. About the pain she hid under quiet smiles and quick comebacks. One evening, she showed him a scar on her shoulder. It was small, clean, almost surgical. "Bullet," she said, like she was talking about the weather. John looked at it, then at her. "You military?" She shook her head. "Not exactly." "What does that mean?" She looked away. "Means I did things. Worked with people who believed in quiet wars. No flags. No uniforms, just missions and consequences." He didn't press further. But something shifted that night. Rachel wasn't just a waitress with a haunted past. She was someone who'd seen the dark corners of the world and decided to disappear. And now, somehow she was here. In his town. In his life. John didn't know what was coming next. He didn't know that the past was already chasing them both. But one thing was clear. He wasn't walking away. Not this time. For days, John noticed a dark SUV parked across the street from the diner. It sat there like a shadow, its windows tinted so dark no one could see inside. Every night, without fail, it appeared at the same time, waiting silently. At first, John thought it was just someone new in town, maybe someone watching the place for reasons he didn't know. But Rachel's eyes told him otherwise. She didn't need to say a word. He could see it in the way she glanced at the vehicle. Quick, tense, and full of warning. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, John caught Rachel watching the SUV from the diner's back door. Her jaw tightened, and she whispered, "They found me." Her voice was calm but heavy, like a stone dropping into deep water. John's heart tightened. He had come to care for her more than he expected, but now he understood why she never talked about her past. Whatever followed, her wasn't just trouble, it was dangerous. He asked who they were. Rachel's eyes darkened with memories she didn't want to share. "People from my old life," she said softly. "Ex-intelligence operatives. Private contractors. They don't play by the rules. They're dirty, and they don't forgive." John's soldier instincts kicked in. He'd left that life behind, but old skills never really fade. He reached for his duffel bag where he kept his old 1911 pistol and a combat knife. Things he promised himself he wouldn't use again. But this time was different. If those people wanted Rachel, they would have to get through him first. And John was ready. Rachel's gaze held a mixture of fear and something John hadn't seen before. Hope. Maybe for the first time, she believed, someone might stand by her and fight. They thought the SUV was the worst of it. But the real danger arrived suddenly. One hot July evening, two men walked into the diner while Rachel was working. They didn't look like regular customers. Their clothes were too clean, their eyes too cold. One of them wore gloves, a strange choice for summer. John noticed immediately. Something about their calmness screamed trouble. John stood slowly and calmly, blocking Rachel's path. "Lost, fellas?" he asked, voice low and steady. "No," one of them said with a chilling smile. "We're here for the girl." The diner fell into a heavy silence. Everyone stopped what they were doing and watched, sensing the tension. Rachel's body froze for a moment, her face pale. John instinctively moved in front of her, like a shield. "She's not going anywhere." The first man's hand slid inside, his coat, and John reacted in a flash. He had seen this move too many times to hesitate. But the fight wasn't clean or easy. A glass bottle smashed over John's head, sending sharp pain through his skull. A fist hit his ribs, knocking the breath out of him. The gun came out with the safety off, the cold metal gleaming. Rachel dove behind the bar, disappearing from view. She was fast, but John was faster. He grabbed the shotgun hidden under the counter. The owner kept it for nights just like this. The fight was brutal but quick. John and Rachel worked together, their movements almost instinctive, like they had done this before, though they hadn't. One of the men got away, disappearing into the night, but the other lay unconscious on the floor. When the danger passed, Rachel looked at John with trembling hands and eyes full of pain. "You should have let them take me," she whispered. John shook his head, his voice firm despite the pounding in his head. "No, not this time." After the bar fight, they knew things had changed. The quiet life Rachel had tried to build was gone. The past was not just a memory. It was a living, breathing threat chasing them both. John took Rachel to a cabin he once built with his brother, deep in the woods. It was a cold, quiet place, far from prying eyes. Inside, the fire crackled, and the silence hung thick between them. Rachel finally began to open up. She told John about the life she ran from, a life full of secrets and shadows. She had worked for people who disappeared others in the dead of night, people who did not care about right or wrong. She helped clean up their messes, but it was a dangerous game, and when she was ordered to erase a 12-year-old boy who had seen too much, something inside her broke. She faked his death and got him out. When her bosses found out, they decided she was a risk too. John listened, not judging, just absorbing every word. When Rachel looked at him, her voice cracked with guilt and fear. She admitted something that shocked him. She had been sent to find him, to watch him, maybe worse, a year ago. Her mission had changed the moment she ran. John felt the cold sting of betrayal cut deep, but underneath it was something else. A strange understanding of the impossible choices they both had made. Then came the night of the final confrontation. The last man who came for Rachel arrived alone, professional and calm like death itself. John didn't hesitate. The knife was sharp, the shot quick. When the fight ended, silence fell over the snowy ground. Rachel stood at the edge of the trees, tears freezing on her cheeks. She admitted she never meant to love John, but now she did. He walked up slowly, looking into her eyes with the same quiet strength he had from the start. "Then stay, and never lie again." She nodded, a promise forged in the cold night. This was not just a story of danger and betrayal. It was about finding someone who stands with you when your past is trying to tear you apart. It was about love born in the darkest places and the courage to fight not just for survival, but for the hope of something real. After the violent confrontation in the woods, John and Rachel knew things could never go back to the way they were. The danger had not disappeared. It had only shifted, becoming something less immediate but no less real. They stayed in the cabin for a few days, tending wounds both physical and emotional. The cold outside mirrored the silence between them, heavy, almost suffocating but necessary. John watched Rachel carefully, noticing how the weight of her past still pressed on her, like a shadow she couldn't shake no matter how hard she tried. He understood that pain well. He too carried ghosts that sometimes surfaced when the night was quiet and the world felt far away. One night, as the fire burned low, Rachel finally spoke without holding back. She told John about the dreams that haunted her, faces of people she had lost, mistakes she wished she could undo, and the fear that maybe, no matter how far she ran, the past would always catch her. She confessed how hard it was to trust anyone, again, especially after the betrayals she had endured. John listened, not as a soldier or protector, but as a man who had also faced loneliness and loss. He shared some of his own fears, how the war had changed him, made him hard to reach, and how he sometimes wondered if peace was just another kind of battle. Their conversation grew deeper, building a fragile bridge between their broken lives. They weren't just two damaged people sharing a shelter. They were slowly learning how to lean on each other. Rachel's walls began to crumble, and John saw the woman behind the secrets, the woman who longed for peace, for love, for a future that didn't involve running or fighting, The connection between them was no longer just about survival. It was about healing. But healing came with its own challenges. Rachel worried that if they stayed, the people chasing her would find them again, dragging John into a war he didn't ask for. John refused to run. "If they want to fight," he said quietly, "they'll have one. But I'm not leaving you alone." That promise was more than words. It was a vow forged through pain and trust, the kind only two people who had lost everything could make. To keep themselves safe, they started planning. Rachel reached out to old contacts, people she trusted, people who owed her favors. John began training again, running through old drills to keep his body ready. But this time, their fight wasn't on a distant battlefield. It was for a life, together, for freedom from the past. They learned to watch each other's backs, sharing the burden in ways they never expected. One afternoon, Rachel received a message that changed everything. It was a warning. An offer, actually. The people, after her, wanted to make a deal. They would let her go if she delivered John to them. The choice was clear but cruel. Rachel's heart broke. She could run again, disappear into the shadows, and be safe. Or she could protect John, knowing it might mean facing her past head-on and maybe losing him forever. The night was thick with tension as Rachel finally told John about the offer. He didn't flinch. Instead, he took her hand and looked deep into her eyes. "We don't make deals with ghosts," he said. "We face them, together." Those words gave Rachel a strength she hadn't known she still had. The final showdown came sooner than they hoped. The enemies came with weapons and numbers, expecting to find two easy targets. But John and Rachel were ready. The fight was fierce and desperate, each move fueled by years of pain and hope. In the chaos, Rachel used everything she had learned, from her secret past, outsmarting their pursuers, while John fought with the strength and precision of a soldier protecting his home. When the dust settled, the threats were gone, at least for now. The quiet that followed felt like a hard-earned victory. Rachel and John stood side by side, bruised but unbroken. In that moment, they understood something powerful. The past could chase them, but it couldn't define them. They had chosen to fight not just for survival, but for a chance at love and peace. In the days that followed, the two returned to the small town where their story began. They went back to the diner, where familiar faces greeted them with curious smiles. Life wasn't perfect. There were scars that might never fully heal, and shadows that would sometimes linger. But they had each other, and that made all the difference. Rachel began to open up to the town slowly, letting people see the real her, not the woman hiding behind secrets. John found a new purpose, not in war or survival, but in building a future together. Their bond was a quiet kind of strength, proof that even the most broken souls could find healing through trust and love. The lesson of their story wasn't about fighting or running. It was about facing the hardest parts of yourself and choosing to trust someone else with your truth. It was about knowing that love doesn't erase pain, but it gives you a reason to keep going anyway. And sometimes, the most deadly battles are the ones fought inside. John and Rachel learned that peace wasn't a place. It was a promise. A promise to stand together, no matter what shadows the past might bring. Their story ended not with a perfect, happily ever after, but with something real and lasting. Hope born from struggle, and love strong enough to face tomorrow.